I read a newspaper article about your announcement that you were running for governor, and you said, "My candidacy is not an indictment of either party. It's an indictment of the party structures and the parties as the solution to solving our problems." So talk about that. Like you've been in government and politics as a Republican. You could not be more mainstream for 35 years. Like, what are you seeing that made you decide you've got to step out of that, run as an independent?
What I'm seeing is what we're all seeing, which is that the parties have become part of the real problem. The parties have created a home for themselves where they bring out very narrow interests, and there are people who are paid very handsomely to keep us fighting with each other rather than resolving issues. Our politics should reflect the better parts of our nature, right? I mean, it should be about working together, collaboration, inclusivity. What I'm finding is a tremendous joy that people find that they have a common sense, solutions-oriented candidate who is eschewing the party labels.
I couldn't be more thrilled that Rick is running for governor.
I'm very excited that Rick is running.
Rick Bennett is passionate about Mainers.
He is able to work with both sides of the aisle.
I'm very excited.
I'm Rick Bennett, and I'm running for governor of Maine as an independent. This campaign is about Maine, not party politics, not national noise, just common sense solutions that work and putting people first. Together, we will build a Maine where opportunity is real, where government earns your trust, and where every Mainer, no matter their zip code, has a chance to succeed. That's the future. Let's get to work.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your day for this conversation. I'm really excited today to speak with Senator Rick Bennett. Rick has been a longtime player in Maine politics, going back to the early 90s, first in the Assembly, later in the state Senate, where he rose to serve as the president of the Senate back in 2001. He's also served as the chairman of the Maine Republican Party. And as the video made clear, he earlier this year announced that he was running for governor of Maine as an independent. I first met Rick back in 2022 at a brewery, a great brewery in Portland, where we came together to celebrate the passage of open primaries in Maine. It's great to see you, Rick. Welcome.
Thank you, John. It's great to be with you, and thank you. Just amazing turnout for your presentation and your series today. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Great. Well, let's dive into it. So you said this really interesting thing, and I kept coming back to this. I read a newspaper article about your announcement that you were running for governor, and you said, "My candidacy is not an indictment of either party. It's an indictment of the party structures and the parties as the solution to solving our problems." So talk about that. Like you've been in government and politics as a Republican. You could not be more mainstream for 35 years. Like, what are you seeing that made you decide you've got to step out of that, run as an independent? What are you seeing in Maine and nationally?
What I'm seeing is what we're all seeing, which is that the parties have become part of the real problem with the dysfunction in government. Our politics is being demeaned by the partisan approach, which is all about hostility. It's about the worst parts of human nature. It's about fighting with each other, hating on each other. Our politics should reflect the better parts of our nature, right? I mean, it should be about working together, collaboration, inclusivity. kindness, civility, joy. People, human beings are social creatures. We want to be aligned with other people. Unfortunately, the parties have created a home for themselves where they bring out very narrow interests who have, and there are people who are paid very handsomely to keep us fighting with each other rather than resolving issues. And that is what's taken over our politics. And we need to demand better. You're correct, John. I did serve off and on in public office since the early 90s, and I've seen such a stark change.
Wow.
It used to be that we'd have disagreements, you know, um, we'd treat our political opposition as people we disagreed with, not as moral inferiors, not as the enemy. And we've gotten to a very dangerous and dark place in our politics, and the parties are a root cause of it and what they've become.
Hmm. What's it like? I know Maine has a tradition of electing independents, like
Yeah.
Angus King and others, and at the legislative level, at the federal level. What's it like running for office as an independent in Maine? Is it radically different? Is it similar to when you ran as a Republican? What's been the change?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I have to say, I disenrolled from the Republican Party and as an active Republican all my life, as an active partisan, I was reluctant to come to the conclusion I just spoke of a moment ago. But what I'm finding is a tremendous joy that people find that they have a common sense, solutions oriented candidate who is eschewing the party labels and saying we can do better, we can work together, we can don't have to agree, but we can collaborate, we can find solutions together. People get this in their gut. I mean, most
Yeah.
people are just common sense folks. They know the politics isn't working. So I didn't know how I'd feel, frankly, when I disenrolled from the party with my wife and last June 23rd. I left the Oxford town office and I just felt immense relief and a feeling of liberation. And that's what I'm carrying through this campaign. We're running a campaign that is based on treating each other with respect, decency, dignity, and having a joyous journey as part of that.
What I've met Congressman Jared Golden a number of times. I've always liked him, and I read that he's resigning because he just literally feels for the safety of his family.
Yeah,
And I'm wondering, I'm not someone who needs everything to wrap up in a neat little bow. I like paradox. I like messiness. I think all of us in the independent reform movement better like messiness, or we shouldn't be here. But I'm like, when you talk about joy,
yeah,
of like your shackles are off, you're able to connect with the voters, and yet here's a guy who, by all the coverage and everything I know about him, is really similar in his sensibilities. Even though he was a Democrat, he was the Democrat who voted most against the Democrats of anybody in Congress, and he's resigning because he's like, I can't handle this anymore. Is that just where we are? Like, it's kind of both things right now.
yeah. We're in a period of inflection, a real significant change going on in our politics. And Jared, I have immense respect for, and he's a good friend. And we've worked together on a lot of initiatives, including the initiative that we won with the support of 86% of Maine voters, an unheard of number, to keep foreign governments out of our election and call for the sensible regulation of money in politics. That got in 2 years ago. I chaired that campaign. Caitlin LaCase, our campaign manager, um, was the campaign manager for that one. We got 86% of the vote. Jared was very active with that.
Mhm.
He's an authentic guy, and he does have a young family. And it's a zero. It's worse than a zero-sum game in Washington. The sacrifices that cesspool requires of
Yeah.
people, it's just too much, and the level of effectiveness is so marginal. And so I think, particularly when you're looking at Washington and the dysfunction and all of the Sturm and Drang that goes nowhere, um, people who care, people who want to get things done, don't want to serve in Congress.
Let's I want to hear a little bit more about the campaign that 86% of Mainers supported to regulate foreign money. I know it passed, but I know they're holding it up in court, right? Is that like what's the status of that?
Yeah, it's stayed pending resolution in court. It's at the first district in federal court. The very entities who we were trying to keep out of Maine politics because of this loophole that exists, as we all know at the federal level, the FEC has ruled that no foreign governments, foreign actors, foreign nationals can participate in candidate elections, but they left open this interpretation that maybe they can in referendums. And
Right.
we in Maine had seen in spending in referendums here tens of millions of dollars of foreign government money invested to influence our elections. And so Maine people reacted against that in record numbers. And but of course, the very people that were spending all that money decided to hire a bunch of lawyers and sue us in federal court, sue the state of Maine, the people of Maine in federal court. I might also say that 2 years, a year later than that, just in the 24 elections, Maine voters by a record number of votes approved another referendum that limited PAC contributions to $5,000 for independent expenditure PACs. Maine people, like people across this country, are hungry for political reform, democracy reform. They know the system is broken. They know it's benefiting a privileged few at the expense of the rest of us. And they're angry about it and they want action. And so in Maine, we have some chance. We have a chance in Maine, and I'm really thrilled by it. And that's one of the impulses of our candidacy is the opportunity to actually make change in Maine, which we've done historically on a number of issues, including, of course, open primaries, which
Right.
we've up to.
Yeah, when you look at that campaign, you're like 86% of Mainers voted for this. And I'll tell you where my mind goes. My mind goes like, oh, these divisions of red versus blue, which the media tells us are almost like genetic, like they're baked in, are not. They're kind of these, they you can unite people around things that of shared values, and you guys
Yes.
clearly did that.
A lot of these differences are contrived, and they're
They're
willful.
contrived, yeah.
They're designed by people expert in their field who make lots of money keeping us fighting with each other
Yeah.
rather than resolving issues. Conflict is their intent, not resolution.
Yeah.
This is why all these efforts are so badly needed. And I'm really happy that people are understanding that this isn't just about some sort of theoretical thing about how elections are run and how you count votes. This is about putting food on the table. It's about the cost of heating oil. It's about how our schools are run. These are significant issues that government is paralyzed from dealing with because they've lost the way of how to work together, how to build consensus, how to compromise, how to get things done. And that's the unique role of governor, is that the governor is expected to lead and to get things done. And that's why I'm very excited about this. People ask me, why are you running as an independent? I mean, the short answer I give is because I want to govern as an independent, which means everybody's at the table, all voices are heard. We're not running a platform based on dogma and ideology. We're running a policy platform based on what works, what's worked in other states, how to solve real problems that people have, and do it in an inclusive way that is honest with people. People
Right.
crave integrity and honesty, and they want it in government. And they understand. Politicians give people far too credit in their ability to handle the things that you were talking about, paradox and irony and things that don't fit well together. It's
Right.
part of being human.
So what I know we all know the kind of the dysfunction in Washington, the government shutdown, the budget, but what does that look like in Maine? Like
Yeah.
what if you win, what are you stepping into kind of budgetarily, policy wise, educate, like what are the challenges in
I
Maine.
like your phrase "stepping into."
Yeah.
There, yeah, unfortunately, we've begun to see in Augusta some of that hyper-partisanship and dysfunction
Okay.
that comes out of Washington. Maine has a long tradition of not doing politics that way. I mean, for decades, we've elected independents to the governorship on a plurality basis twice in my lifetime. When I was president of the Senate, we had a tied Senate. We had an equal number of Republicans and Democrats, one independent. People didn't think it was going to work. Well, we made it work. We actually collaborated and made the Senate not only functioning, but extraordinarily well functioning, better than,
Wow.
frankly, the House, because we had the power of 35 voices, the total membership of the state Senate. So I I really think that we've got an opportunity here. And I think I've lost track of your question, but I think
Oh, it's just like what are the like so you're describing the dysfunction. What is how we know how that's impacting federally. Literally people don't get paid. The air traffic controllers,
right.
like, what is it looking like
Well,
in Maine?
this is where we've gotten to in Maine too, and because of this hyperpartisanship. Last spring, unlike in the federal government, we actually have to balance our budget, which means that we have to pass a budget that makes sense at some
That's a
level.
law in Maine. That's
It's under our Constitution.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
We have to pass a balanced budget. That doesn't mean we can't engage in borrowing and of that but nature, but the numbers need to add up year on year. Last spring, when we had a budget impasse, and during the entire 6 week period, our healthcare providers, hospitals, nursing homes, behavioral health folks, mental health folks, needed to get paid. And because of the fact that the Democratic leader in the Senate, the Republican leader of the Senate, wouldn't pick up the phone and call the other one for 6 weeks, these providers weren't paid.
Wow.
It has gotten to a point where it's very, very real. This isn't just about theoretical disagreements. This is about impacting real people's lives. Our politics has turned that toxic. And as I say, we deserve better and we can do better. We need to do it willfully.
Hmm. In kind of getting to know you and learning, I know that fiscal responsibility has been something, for the last 35 years, you've been that kind of voice. And it got me thinking. I was very active in the Reform Party.
Mm.
And it was a time when independents, Ross Perot, put the issue of fiscal responsibility and independence together.
Yeah.
And Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton, Ross Perot didn't get a single electoral vote, but he almost single-handedly balanced the United States budget for 2 straight years. And I wonder, do you think about the role that we independents could play in just, I find the conversation about the budget and the debt maddening, because it's almost like fake money. Like we can just spend anything we want. Do you think about that? Is that,
I do.
yeah, how so?
Most people think about this, and of course, this is more of a Washington problem than a state problem, but it affects all of us. So it doesn't really, it's not, you can't really divide issues that easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, and by the way, Ross Perot did very well in Maine. He almost won Maine's 2nd congressional district, which in Maine means that he could have picked up an elector. He actually came in second of the 3 in that district in
Wow.
1992. So yeah, that message resonates with Maine people. Most Maine people have fiscal probity, and they're also pretty socially tolerant. They don't want politicians telling people how to live and who they are. They think people can figure that out for themselves. They are pretty parsimonious with the dollar, and they expect the tax dollars to be spent well. And one of the breakdowns in party politics in Maine has been, we used to have a consensus budgeting process where, not to get too much into the weeds here, but the process would involve 6 months of public hearings and the work of the budget writing committee of the legislature. And people had their voices heard in that
Mm-hmm.
process. And then at the end of it, There was compromise. There was a 2/3 vote to get the budget so it could take effect on July 1st. And could be passed in June because there's a delay between when a bill is passed and when it becomes law. It's a 90-day gap unless it's an emergency, which gets a 2/3 vote. For decades in Maine, we passed budgets on a 2/3 basis. In the last 5 years, we haven't had a public hearing on the current services part of the budget because the majority party needs to pass the budget. The minority party wants to vote against it. And that means that the room to pass the budget's been shrunk to 2.5 months. And we don't even look at 85% of spending in Maine, all because of partisan
Wow.
gridlock.
When you say 85%, is it just like locked in? There's just like,
Yes, on
it's-
cost escalators,
Huh.
it's just locked in and it just doesn't get reviewed. Now, when I'm governor, I'm going to go back to the old model and make these parties put aside their pettiness and their differences and come to a consensus. And the governor can do that. The governor can also make sure that there are full public hearings on the entirety of the budget, not just the new ideas. And that's all we've had in the last 5 years is only public hearings. And then the department heads spend 2 hours explaining their budget. And guess what? Members of the public in that public hearing, after all the oxygen's been sucked out of the room, they get 2 minutes each to talk about their perspective on how this budget actually is going to
wow.
impact.
Wow.
We need to turn that around. When I'm governor, agency heads will submit their testimony in writing a week in advance. They'll come in and answer questions, and we'll give the rest of the time to the public, members of the public, so they can actually tell about the impacts of state spending on their lives, what we can do better, what we should maybe jettison because it's not working anymore.
Yeah.
New ideas for the future. That's what gets lost in this partisan morass.
Yeah. So we passed open primaries back in 2022.
Yes.
Has it what's been the impact?
It's interesting. I want to say first thing, thank you for your leadership, John and Jeremy and Caitlin LaCase. She's with us. She's the manager of our campaign for
The
governor.
maestro.
And she was critical with the two of you in making that happen in Maine.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the few states, that maybe the only state that passed it by the legislature.
Up until this year, then New Mexico did it this year.
Awesome.
But you guys opened the door, absolutely.
Good. Yes, and I was happy that happened because it's in the Maine tradition to dirigo is our state motto, which is Latin for I lead, and we've led on some of these important issues. We don't know what the impact has actually been. We've only had one election in 2024. All the sense of it is just anecdotal at this point. I'm waiting for data, which will come, I think, probably after this coming year, because we've got big primaries coming up in 2026
Right.
for the Senate, for governor. There's a lot of candidates running, and I know that some of those candidates are pushing to have other people who aren't traditionally in the Democratic or Republican Party come in and vote for them and express themselves. And so I think that it's going to really, it's going to be interesting to see, but I'm optimistic we're going to get some really positive data on this.
Right, because both in your race for governor, there's 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans trying to win their party primary, and then you'll face off against the winners.
More than that now.
Oh, really? Okay.
2 more entrants, but yes, they're big fields, and so yes, I think.
Got it.
And
So
then we have the interesting U.S. Senate race in Maine, which Senator Collins is running for re-election. There's a Democratic primary, which is
Right.
an establishment candidate. The governor is running against a real upstart newcomer that has got a lot of traction and raising a lot of money. So I think there's going to be a lot of energy coming into that race too, because it's an open for independent participation.
I have to say, it's really interesting to think about independents getting to shape who the Republican and the Democrat are, and then they have an independent option in the fall.
Yes.
next year. That's going to be really interesting.
Well, you know, independents are about a third of Maine's electorate.
Yeah,
And why should we be having our tax dollars go to fund closed primaries where we don't get to participate? And why wouldn't our, I mean, I don't need to sing the hymn to the choir here, but
right.
but you know, it just makes so much sense, and it's going to lead to better outcomes.
Yep.
You know, and these in many states, I think about 70% of elections are effectively decided in the primaries, and so having independent participation in those elections actually enfranchises a whole bunch of people that wouldn't otherwise have a say in who's leading our country in our states.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to break your heart, Rick, but I wish it was 70%. It's actually more like 90% of races. I mean, the numbers are they're heartbreaking at the lack of competition in November, particularly, below governor and US Senate, when you get to state legislature, county sheriff, things like that. I mean, the number of races where one candidate's on the ballot, just in neighboring Massachusetts, 75% of the state legislature gets elected with one candidate on the ballot. It's heartbreaking. I have one last observation and question, and then I want to open it up. We've got some great questions. So I love that. What was the motto of Maine? We lead.
Dirigo, Dirigo, Dirigo. It's Latin, and it means I lead.
I lead. One of the things that I've always thought never got enough attention about Maine is that 100 years ago, Maine developed a new way of printing ballots where candidates were listed alphabetically as opposed to by party column. And it's one of those things that you make a change 100 years ago and you see the resonance of that down the ages, because, they just had an election in New York City where the Democrat and Republican are listed right there front and center, and the independent candidates are over in Siberia.
Yeah.
And that's part of like how you marginalize independents, and they don't get marginalized in Maine. You just print their name alphabetically.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, like, Maine has such a history of leading on these questions. And if put yourself in the governor's mansion, a year from now, what kind of megaphone or platform on these kind of like, let's change politics nationally, how would you think about playing that role?
I would think about playing it very assertively. I tell you, we need to get away from having our elections defined by party. Alaska's led the way here, and very well, where you combine open primaries in the sense that everybody is in one primary.
Yep.
And then you use ranked choice voting, and the top vote getters, maybe 4 or 5, advance to the general election, regardless of party. And then those people will be subject to a ranked choice election in the general election. And then people can still associate with parties if they want. They can organize by party. They can do that, freedom of association. But we're not building it into the statute for the elections. So I would advance that notion in Maine. I think we're well equipped to deal with it. I think if people elect me governor, they were going to expect some changes like this, and I'm going to deliver. That's
great. All right. I want to open it up here for questions. We're going to start with a very brass tax question from Tom Graff about money. Go ahead, Tom. You got to take yourself off mute, Tom.
There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, John, first, thanks for all you do. Really, I know the senator mentioned that earlier. Thank you very much.
But sure.
What I would like to know, Senator, is how do you mount a campaign without the financial backing of one of the major parties? Where are you getting your funds? How do you do that? I mean, they have so much money, and and that's one of the problems. The money controls the parties, but what do you do?
I ask people for their help. And I will do that with all of you. If you like the reform agenda that we're doing, we just need your help. And I'm getting a good response. I mean, I think we raised some money early, and people took note because it was 6 days after our announcement that the first filing period closed. And we had raised over $200,000, which in Maine is pretty darn good for 6 days worth of fundraising.
It's
We've
great.
been in the field since, working hard at it. A lot of one-to-one communications. Candidates do this. We are doing lots of house parties, introducing me to networks, people's networks, and then those people introduce me to their networks. But one of the challenges of an independent candidacy is the infrastructure and the attendant monies that the parties have already baked in. So we don't have to match them dollar for dollar. We just need to build a competitive campaign. We're doing that. But I would just simply ask all of you to think about giving at bennettforgovernor.com and /donate and whatever you can afford. And we're getting really good response so far. And it's because people know the system isn't working. And I am a credible candidate. They see that. I have decent, really good name recognition for somebody who hasn't held statewide office. I've been working in a prominent way for years and built up a lot of networks through my public service and my business experience as well. So we're just working at it. It's just, that's one of the reasons we started early too. We know this is going to be one of the things we have to work on. So
It seems like you have a good strategy, and I hope that continues and you can remain financially competitive. And good luck to you. And yeah, I'll donate to you.
thank you very much.
I hope everybody else will too.
That's
Because
great.
I think you're doing a great job. All your answers today now really hit home. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Much appreciated.
We're going to go to Peter Myers, who has a question similar about other barriers to running as an independent. Go ahead, Peter.
Good afternoon, and thank you for taking my question. Yes, my question is, are there administrative barriers? Do you have to circulate petitions to get your name on the ballot? How is it different than if you were a party candidate? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah, no, in Maine, there's a little bit of a hill there to climb, but some independent candidacies can't meet this hill. Ours won't have trouble with it. We need to get between 4,000 and 6,000 signatures, I think by mid-May, in order to qualify for the ballot. But we can get those signatures from any Maine voter of any party or no party, and so. We can do that almost now with the people who've signed up on our interested citizens list. So we're going to meet that one. But Maine is, as I said, Maine has elected in my lifetime 2 independents to the office of governor, and they were at times like this. One was 1974 in the wake of Watergate, where people were disgusted by the corruption in government, and they voted for Jim Longley. He beat the Republican, the Democrat. And the Democrat, by the way, is somebody that most of you have probably heard of. His name was George Mitchell, who later on was named to the U.S. Senate and became Senate Majority Leader. The other one was Angus King in 1994. It was, as someone was saying about the Ross Perot movement, it was 2 years after that. There was a lot of disaffection with government, and Angus King won that on a plurality basis. And I was president of the Senate when Angus King was governor, and he was a real independent. He, as governor, he listened to both sides, and he governed from the center, and he became a very popular governor and won re-election overwhelmingly. And so there's a well-trod path here in Maine to do this. And, I think we're at the time where people are ready for it once again.
Great. I want to go to Steve Pittman from the Colorado Forward Party, who has a question about the use of ranked choice in this election. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for organizing this meeting, and my thanks to Rick Bennett for doing what he's doing in Maine. I asked if Maine uses ranked choice voting for the gubernatorial election, and then asked Google and well, not Google, but one of those, and they said no, and that astonished me. I'll tell you, we are a minor political party in Colorado, contemplating nominating people, putting them on the ballot, and we don't want to nominate spoilers. And unfortunately, with plurality voting, it's very easy for an independent candidate to be a spoiler and throw the election in the way they don't want to go. So I wonder what your thinking is there about, being a spoiler in the election, if that's a concern, and what you might do about it.
Yeah, I think the term spoiler is used by people who want to maintain the status quo of the like, party over everything.
Amen.
And so I'm a very credible candidate for governor, and in fact, I'm thrilled because of that the Forward Party is endorsing me as I'm the first endorsement of their 2026 cycle, and they did that very purposefully. And in fact, Thursday of this week, the Forward Party co-founder, Governor Christy Todd Whitman from New Jersey, is coming to Maine, and we're going to have a fireside chat in a public space about leadership in turbulent times. And I wish you were all going to be here because I'd invite you, but it's going to be an interesting conversation. I'm delighted to get the Forward Party's endorsement. I think that says something about the credibility of my campaign. This is about, we're going to win this election. And as I said, it's not unheard of. In fact, it's something that occurs periodically in Maine. So I feel very comfortable about where we are. And so the election is going to be spoiled for a couple of the candidates, and one of them won't be me.
Well, I thank you. I agree. We get help from national in vetting our candidates here in Colorado. You went through, I'm sure, an arduous vetting process with them, and that's one of the focuses. Is this person a credible candidate who could actually win the election? Is not simply going to be a spoiler in the election. So
Exactly.
again, thanks for all you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the question because that is, and some people wouldn't have the temerity to pose such a question in this forum. And I appreciate your doing that.
All right, I want to go to John Palmer, who has a really great question. I'm just going to let you ask it, John. Go ahead.
Sure, I might even combine it. Thanks, John. Good to see you, Rick. The question was, well, one of them was, can you learn anything from Jim Longley and Angus King in terms of what they did to win? And my other question was you could combine it with that, which is, did they attack the two parties? And the parties have become, I think, more toxic now than they were then. Although you probably have a better memory than I do. But would an effective strategy be to attack the two parties to sort of really showcase yourself as an independent and different than that?
Well, taking your second question first, there's an old line in politics about never attack your opponent when they're in the process of destroying themselves. And I think it might apply here because I think the exhibit A for dysfunction of the party system we're living through right now, and everybody's living through it. Yes, I'm perfectly comfortable, as you can hear, talking about why the parties have taken us down the wrong path. But I don't think I need to spend too much time on it. In fact, to get to your first question, the thing that Jim Longley and Angus King did, which I think was really the basis of their success, is they talked about issues. They talked about things that matter. They didn't talk about like all these little wedge issues that the silos in the Republican and Democratic side get all wound up about, and everybody has to have those viewpoints or they're excommunicated from whatever religion or faith or whatever it is that they think they're practicing. And so I remember Jim Longley had these very effective, simple ads back when television was a thing. he'd raise a policy issue and he'd say, think about it. And, it provoked people to actually think, yeah, I can think for myself. I don't need to be told what to think. And yeah, I'm going to think about that. And I'm going to elect this guy governor. Angus King, focused on very practical issues. He focused on a functioning economy. He wrote a book called Making a Difference. And I remember one of the chapters was called No Fish Should Leave Maine with Its Head On. The notion that we shouldn't be just commodity providers, that we should add value to what we produce before we export it from Maine so that we can provide jobs and create a brighter economy for people in Maine, even in rural areas. And so those are the sorts of things real people want to see from their governor. And they don't, my whole candidacy is predicated on the notion that people actually want results. They want a government that works and functions and will attend to some of these wrenching challenges and great opportunities in a way that is different and isn't demeaning and is uplifting and really brings the best of Maine forward. And that's what I'm going to project.
Great answer. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, John.
All right, I want to go to Tracy Moore, who has a question about LD 1422. Go ahead, Tracy.
Yeah, thanks, John. Hi, Rick. Sorry, my camera's not functioning. I may misunderstood it, but I thought that bill was trying to introduce the fully open, nonpartisan primaries, and then, as you described, 4 or 5 advance to the general and use ranked choice voting. Is that indeed what it was, and why didn't it pass? And how can you, as governor, help enable it to pass?
I'm not familiar with the bill by that title, by that number. What's?
I just pulled it off of the online. I just pulled it up and it said open primaries ranked plus ranked choice voting, and it was this spring.
This past spring?
Yeah, and it was introduced by a Democrat and didn't go any further.
Yeah, I don't have the particulars on that bill.
I don't think it got out of committee. Sorry to jump in.
No, jump in.
As I recall, it didn't get out of committee, Senator, so you wouldn't have had the opportunity to vote on it.
Yes, I'm not familiar with it. I don't know the details of why that didn't get out of committee either, but I will look into that.
That will solve the spoiler problem.
Well, there is, as I said, I don't believe there is a spoiler problem. I think people need to vote for the best candidate.
Right, but some people perceive there may be a problem if they're not convinced you can win. So anyway, it would solve that.
Yeah, I'm grateful for that. And as I said, when I'm governor, we will marry those two issues, and we will we'll put that right before the legislature in a way that works and is constitutionally sound. Someone earlier was talking about the ranked choice issue with respect to the governor's election. That actually, ranked choice was passed by the voters. It was reaffirmed by the voters, but of course people sue, and that the Supreme Court in Maine upheld ranked choice voting for primaries and for federal general elections, but made the determination, because of the way the bill was written, that it conflicted with state law with respect to state general elections. Some smart people got together and they tried to correct that, and they actually put a bill together this past year that landed on the governor's desk. She was loath to sign it, so it was pulled back and is now waiting further action in the legislature. But it did get enacted in the House and Senate to address the Supreme Court's concerns. So that may come up again this year. I don't know, but the people of Maine really want ranked choice voting. They've demonstrated that twice. So I'm hoping that we will extend it to the general elections.
That's great. Thank you.
Again, I honestly, fervently believe that that we can win this election regardless of whether there's ranked choice voting or the current plurality standard, just based on history in Maine.
I think this
Good
is,
luck.
yeah, this is like this issue of wasted votes. I know David Thornburg also had a question, and David, maybe you could pop in here and add to this. But I think This is like an important debate that the independent reform movement has yet to have, because my experience is that there's almost a knee-jerk acceptance of the notion that independents are spoilers. And that's the language that the Democrats and Republicans use to describe us. And I don't know why the reform movement, the independent movement, is so willing and ready to just accept their definition of who we are. But I'm not saying that that people are wrong. I just think we need to have an open discussion about why do we think of ourselves as spoilers? If the two-party system isn't working, what are we spoiling? Anyway, that's my position. I'd love to hear other people's.
Well, when David, I appreciate you taking yourself off mute and addressing this, but I have to say, when elections are decided by a handful of votes, 5-6%, and then you have an independent that comes in and it clearly is taking some votes from one side or the other, and they get 8%. I can sort of see that. Our campaign is highly competitive. And not only that, but I don't even have the faintest clue about who I'm going to be taking votes from, if you want to accept that construction, which I don't, because I think we have as much a legitimacy to the ballot as anybody else. And so, but I agree with you, John. It's this is language which is put upon us by people who are trying to maintain the established status quo.
Hey, John, let me take your opening.
Yeah, jump in, David.
First of all, Rick, I noticed you and I are wearing the same shirt. So we both have impeccable taste. I'm going to guess LL Bean. Is that
you got it?
All right. Well, me too. So there. So I want to maybe offer up a variation of this question about spoilers and how independents gain further ground in the political tussle. So I'm in Pennsylvania, one of the most partisan states forever. We're one of the big three states with New York and Florida that still doesn't have any variation of open primaries. So, and I have always long admired, wherever it came from and however it's seated there, the independent political spirit that seems to permeate Maine a lot more than certainly here. My question to you is, if we're trying to move towards the kind of political debate and political competition that you're talking about, that John's talking about, that I believe in, there's going to be a tipping point, right? At some point, and we keep thinking it's right around the corner. But what advice would you have from folks like me who were mired in this, 1950s era Coke and Pepsi kind of world, but where to begin, how to gain a foothold?
Yeah.
I just love your thoughts.
Well, we're in a different place, and there are a lot of activities afoot here that nationally. I mean, the fact that I don't know how many people are on this call, but it's astonishing, really, that that we can find each other in today's world. Mm-hmm. And not only Open Primaries is a great organization. This morning I did an interview with Unite America. We've got, as I said, the forward parties endorsing our candidacy publicly on Thursday. We're using resources from the Good Party. There are these groups spreading. Former senator from West Virginia has created a new group. And these groups, and I know many of you are involved with many of these groups.
Yeah.
And this is moving us toward that tipping point. And the other thing that's moving us toward the tipping point is the extraordinary number of people like me who are putting themselves out with thorough credibility as non-party candidates for office, for the highest offices in the land, for the U.S. Senate, for governor, for the House. I'm on everybody's list, like probably you are too, but is it Mike Duggins who's running?
Yeah, from Michigan.
From Michigan, former Democratic mayor of Detroit, I think, and he's Jennifer Granholm. I talked with her recently, and she said she thinks he's going to win. There is something afoot this year.
Yep.
And I think when you said the tipping point or the inflection point, I think we're at it. We just need to push it along and hang together and get it done. And I think the candidate, you can't win unless you're playing with candidates. You've got candidates in the field that are credible and moving forward and showing a different path. And that's what we're doing. And I think that's what a lot of these other candidates are doing too.
Great.
Yeah, and you've got groups like the Independent Veterans of America that's running slates of independents that are all veterans. You've got, you mentioned the Forward Party, United Independents. There's lots of incubating groups. Dan Osborne in Nebraska, who's running, who got 47% of the vote for U.S. Senate. He's running again. So I agree with you. I think there's something afoot in the country. We're going to go to Dave Wenzel, who has a question about, well, go ahead, Dave, you ask it.
Yeah, it sort of got answered in between when I put that out there. But because you are running as an independent for reasons that you see a dysfunctional system, my question is your campaign highlighting, and if so, what is it highlighting about policies to change that for the future, not so that other people don't have to necessarily run as independents?
Yes, well, I mentioned, could you repeat your question? I want to make sure I get it right.
Yeah, I think the question is, given that you're running as an independent because you see a structural problem, what policies are you going to be promoting to fix the structural problem?
Okay. Well, let me answer the first. First of all, we need to model a different approach. And that's the leadership by example is critically important here. So I think, winning this election, governing differently, governing the way that I saw Angus King do, which, fill out your cabinet with the best people. Don't run on basis of dogma and party platforms. You create your own platform. So certainly government reform, anti-corruption legislation will be part of that agenda, as well as electoral reform and campaign finance reform, which I've led on in the legislature already with a number of initiatives, and I'll continue those as governor. Driving dark money out of our elections, unmasking it really, which is completely within the spirit and tenor of Citizens United. Put a bill in Maine to mirror Arizona's law in that way, which says that if you're going to have an independent expenditure PAC that spends money to influence elections, you have to disclose all your $5,000 donors. And if that's not the original source of funds, those entities need to disclose all their $5,000 donors. Goes all the way back to the dark money source, the billionaire or special interest that's funding that. So those kinds of initiatives I would put front and center. But I think also we just need to address real issues that people care about, like housing, like the fact that housing supply in Maine is terrible. Nobody can afford to buy a home if you're a first-time home buyer. We need more housing supply. We need to drive down our energy costs. We're the highest energy costs in New England, and that's holding back our economy and our manufacturing base. We need to deal with our schools. Maine used to be the best performing among the top quintile of performers in schools, and right now, Maine fourth graders are reading are not performing. Only 27% proficiency at the fourth grade level in reading. Grade. So there's these are not issues that are dealt with sufficiently by bumper stickers and slogans from the party platforms. These require people of good faith coming together and figuring out what works to drive positive solutions so that Mainers can prosper, live happily, live healthy lives here in Maine. And I think that's the critical work of government, which is getting lost in partisan dysfunction.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all that you said there. I just think that part of the problem is the incentive. You may decide to lead in that way, but the incentives for the representatives are partisan politics, and they're less interested in actually solving those problems than getting their next campaign check and their next primary vote from the most partisan of voters.
Agreed. We do need to deal with that. And as I said, the reform I'd go to there is the Alaska model for the conduct of campaigns.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we're going to go to Kirk Martiniak, who has a question about your identity. Rick, go ahead, Kirk.
I'm not going to get that personal with you. Basically, there's several different types of independents. Bernie Sanders is an ideological type independent, and then Angus King is, I guess you'd call him swing, or I don't know what type you would classify him as. There's all different types. Ross Perot was considered ideological, but opposite ends of the spectrum. How do you see yourself? How would you classify yourself as an independent?
Pragmatic problem solver. I hope does that answer your question?
Sort of. I don't really think that's in the wheelhouse of definition, but I guess it's okay if you can create your own definition of an independent.
I'm not ideological. In fact, I mean, somebody referenced earlier how people vote with their parties. The Bangor Daily News, which is the most esteemed paper in Maine, recently did a study a couple of years ago looking at members of the legislature and how they vote with respect to the majority of their caucus. I, being a Republican at the time, voted about 22% with a majority of the Republican caucus. The average legislator didn't, I'm sorry, just the reverse. 22% of the time it didn't vote with the majority of the caucus. The average legislator was 3%. They went back 10 years and they saw that the average legislator 10 years ago would vote 10% of the time against the majority of their caucus. What that tells you is that things have gotten very, very partisan. And I've seen this in my years of experience. People are, through social pressure, through social media, through pressure in the caucuses, they're told to stand in line and do what the party leaders tell them to. And that's what's not working. It's not providing a solution set that is serving the people of Maine. And I reject that. I think we can learn from other states. I don't care whether they're blue, red, purple, whatever. States doing the best solutions to a given issue should be looked at. In Maine, we've got 1.4 million people. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to find the best solutions on the problems that we're facing, adapt them for our state, and implement them and get it done. And people really want effective government that delivers results. And that's what I aim to do.
You know, just to add one sentence in there, Kirk, I think one of the things that's part of why I wanted to go to your question is that the independent movement has lots of flavors. It has people coming from the right, from the left, from the center, people that are right on some issues and left on others. And I think that one of the ways we're going to get to a tipping point of the independent movement breaking through is when we fully embrace that diversity and recognize that being an independent is more of an attitude than an ideology. It's more saying this old way of doing politics is not working for our state, for our country, for our people. We have to bring together people from very different viewpoints with real differences of opinion to build a movement to change the way we do politics in this country. That's my belief. And I think that's starting to happen. All right, we are out of time. I really want to thank you, Senator, for coming. Please, everyone, if you're inspired by Rick's campaign, go to the website, make a donation, tell your rich uncle to go make a donation as well. It's really important that to the extent that we can, we support leaders and candidates and movements and organizations that are advancing this, pro-human, pragmatic, I like that, pragmatic problem solver agenda.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Can you state the website again, please?
Yeah, it's right in the chat. Let's.
Oh, it is. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Bennett-
I got to bring it up here.
BennettForGovernor.com. That's BENNETT forgovernor.com. There's another guy in Colorado named Bennett running for governor. He only has one T, so don't confuse us, please. Yeah, but Bennett with two N's and two T's for governor.com, and you can find how to help the campaign there.
Yeah, and everybody knows someone who lives in Maine. So give money, talk to your rich uncle, and talk to your friends and family and relatives that live there about getting involved and checking out Rick's effort. Thank you all. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We've got some great virtual discussions coming up in December and the new year. We'll keep you posted. And thank you, Rick.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the opportunity.
Take care.